When we were young, 2024 all album plays, 57 records being played from front to back in track list order. We are going to be listening to all of them. On this episode, we are talking about Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You, and we brought along our friend Maude of Maudify.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a record coming out.
It's true. It's called Mod Style. I went through many names, but that's the one I chose. Comes out May 31st. There's a bunch of singles out already that you can listen to on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer if you're nasty.
Well, before we, Lizzie and I, who have never listened to Neck Deep in our lives, get into our review on this record, Lizzie, tell us a little bit about Neck Deep and this album.
This is the second album that they put out. This previous album was so successful that they then got signed to Hopeless Records, pretty much immediately quit their jobs and then dropped out of college. This came out August 14, 2015, and Jeremy McKinnon of A Day to Remember was one of the producers, along with Andrew Wade as well. We have quite a few singles that dropped off of here. So we had Gold Steps, Can't Kick Up the Roots, Serpents, and Decembers. Threat Level Midnight was released third, but is not listed as a single technically. They started writing this album before the first one even dropped, saying that we wanted to make it sound more polished and rounded, which I think is interesting. I haven't listened to the first one. I've only listened to this one. So we're going to see how that turned out, I guess, in different ways. They demoed their new music on their tour bus while they were on Warped 2014. And then they went on to record 20 songs and landed with 12.
I do want to commend them for never releasing like a terrible deluxe anniversary edition or something with all of the bonus tracks. Because I feel like that's a really easy thing to do that a lot of bands do when the album turns a certain age. And I really hope that they don't do that.
This album charted number 8 on the UK charts and number 17 on the US Billboard 200 chart. Can't Kick Up Roots charted number 9 in the UK independent single breakers chart as well. Yeah. Are we really gonna? Oh, really?
Yeah. Let's do Roots Discourse.
Roots Discourse.
Roots Discourse.
Interesting.
I think that it's weird that trees have to be so planted, you know? Before we get into our opinions on this record, make sure that you are subscribed to the Emo Social Club channel. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media, and make sure you're following Maude on all of her social media as well. We have a playlist of all of the other reviews that we've done for this with some other guests and other friends.
Like, comment, and subscribe if you liked it. And if you liked it, then like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah.
There we go. Here are my thoughts on Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. I have never listened to Neck Deep before in my life. This is a band that came out a little bit later, with this album itself being from 2015. When I kind of moved out of the Warped Tour kind of scene type of bands, I kind of was like, I already listened to all the bands I need to listen to, so I'm good, I'm done. This was just a little bit later than that era, so this whole era of any bands that really were doing like pop punk, anything during like 2012 to 2016, just were like, I'm not really following it, I'm not vibing with it. So Neck Deep just sort of put into that little bubble, and I was like, no thank you, I'm not going to check it out, I'm good, don't need it. I was also really never like a huge pop punk fan in general. Like I was more on the emo, the metal, the hardcore side of things, and just pop punk just was one of those genres that just never really caught my ear, caught my eye. I was like, I don't really care. I'm glad that a lot of people like it, it's just not for me. The sound doesn't do anything for me. And I think a lot of the songs kind of just all sound the same. There's like a format. It just all kind of blends together. I am working on that now. I'm trying better to not end up just being such a hater of pop punk. So we're getting there. So then listening to this record, feeling that way, I was like, damn, a lot of these songs kind of sound the same. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot in this record that I was like, okay, that's cool. I enjoy that. And obviously, I have a lot of friends who like Neck Deep. What's up?
Never heard of them.
Yeah. So now I'm like, I have to like this band because a lot of friends like them. That's been my going into this record, is like, I'm going to like it, and there's some good stuff to like here. Ben's voice is very good for being on a pop punk record. Having a singer that is good over this type of music is just very like hard to find sometimes. Like some of the singers are not always good. Ben's voice is very good on this, so I did enjoy that part of it. I do think that some of the lyrics are quite good on this too, though there are some that I'm just like, what are we talking about here? What's going on? When I talk about formula of pop punk music, there are a lot of songs on this that start off with a riff, go into a high energy verse, go into the chorus, and then go into a bass and drum only verse right after that chorus.
Oh, yeah.
And then go back into a chorus.
Let me tell you, not new for Neck Deep at this point in
It
their career
is
either.
it is like a lot of songs on this. And I was like, I bet the second verse is just the bass and drum. There it is. There we go. It's a good formula. I don't think that it's a bad thing when bands do it, but I do think that you kind of got to do some different shit on the record. Otherwise, it does get stale by the fourth time you've heard what is essentially like a technique, a trick, a formula. You're like, oh, I've heard this before, so I don't need to hear it again. So there was a lot of songs where I'm like, I would like this if not for just repeating that same thing again. But overall, I was fine with the record. I listened to it a few times and enjoyed some of the songs. I think one of the things about records like this is like, you don't necessarily need to listen to this record in full. Having the songs kind of on shuffle or having them out of the context of the record works just as good as listening to them in the context of the record, if not better. So it's like if I had like some of these songs on shuffle, I'd be like, oh hell yeah, like this fits in really well with like other bands and like it's kind of a variety there. I think when you're just listening to the same formula over and over again, it's like, yeah, it gets tiresome, but by no means is it a bad song if it just comes up on shuffle. So maybe, maybe we're shuffling. Maybe every day I'm shuffling.
Okay.
Don't ball your fists up at me. Here are my top tracks from Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. Normally don't pick the singles, which was easy for this because I didn't know which one they were. Definitely thought Kali Ma was a single.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I think it's just because a lot of our friends have like either requested it or have said, oh, you should listen to this song by Neck Deep. So I assumed that was a single, so I did not put it on my list. I put Citizens of the Earth, which was the opener track. I picked a lot of the songs that did not have the same feeling and vibe as the rest of the record. So did open up a little bit of like different sounds from Neck Deep on this record and did not just sort of blend into me. So this was a very nice opener to the record. I also thought it sounded a lot like Sum 41.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe too. That's why I also did like that.
Yeah.
And then we got more into the album and I'm like, where's this sound?
Where's the Sum 41 of it all?
It is a really interesting song to throw at the beginning. I feel like it kind of falsely sets the tone for the album. I feel like Threat Level Midnight does a much better job of kind of like giving an overture or like kind of paraphrasing what the rest of the album is going to feel like.
Yes.
That being said, Citizens of Earth is still a fucking awesome song.
It's a banger. I really did like it. I did feel that like vibe going into it. And then, yeah, like you said, it just didn't like fit with the rest of it. But to me, that was kind of what I liked about it because a lot of it did blend together when I listened to the whole thing as a full package. So certainly this one was just a little bit more like my brain tuned into it and I was like, yeah, we're jamming. We're fucking we're doing
in on it.
We're doing
in
little
this.
moves. You know?
Yeah.
The second one I'll say is Serpents. It just stood out as more lyrically interesting. It stood out as more melodically interesting. I dig this sound. I felt like it was a little bit more like a kind of a Bring Me the Horizon type vibe to it. Like when Bring Me the Horizon goes pop punk on some of their songs.
Those damn Brits.
Those damn Brits.
Brits.
My third track, I almost didn't pick December, but they do a Chicago mention.
Ew.
So Chicago mentioned.
Whoa.
I'm picking Chicago. That was like I literally was sitting there just like, I don't think I should pick December as my third, but it is a good song. Obviously, everybody we've ever talked to about Neck Deep has said December. It's like a staple that it's like one of the only songs I knew going into this record was December. So yeah, I picked it because Chicago mentioned, and that's it. That's all I got to do. Say Chicago, I pick it. My least favorite track from Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. Again, because a lot of this blends together and there is a lot of formulaic stuff, there were a few songs that I wasn't feeling, but there were some that like I was like, it's fine. Like Gold Steps I'll listen to and not have an issue with it. It's not my favorite on this record, but I wasn't like, I'm going to choose this as my least favorite. My least favorite was Threat Level Midnight because it sounds like a UK band writing a song about Americana throwback and nostalgia. And I was like, This seems like a writing exercise that just didn't really sound authentic at all to me.
It's also really interesting that they decided to shout out the US version of The Office.
Yes.
Because that's not a very like popular opinion amongst people from the UK that that's the better version.
Exactly.
But Neck Deep, they've said in interviews that they really enjoy the US version of The Office, which obviously if they've named a freaking song after it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's one of the songs on the record. It doesn't feel like it does anything really special. And I think there's like some lyrics on it that like, especially the chorus, like it just kind of ends on like a weird line that just didn't really feel good to me listening to it comparatively to a lot of the other songs that used a similar formula on this. If you dropped the song from the record, I probably wouldn't even notice or mind that it wasn't there, versus songs like Serpents and Citizens of Earth that like really stood out to me as like fun, cool songs that didn't sound like everything else on it. So that's the only one that really stood out to me as like I could skip this one every time and not mind it. Overall, I thought the record was fine. Not the worst thing I've ever heard. Not necessarily my favorite of everything pop punk or 2015 core or any of that. But I wouldn't mind if like some of these songs came up on shuffle. And I will say I'm glad to like be part of the crowd with like my friends who like Neck Deep, because now I can be like, oh yeah, I know this one. I remember this one. That's cool, right, guys? I'm like a cool guy now.
I'm Maude, and these are my thoughts on Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. This album came out when I was 15 years old, so I was like the target demo for sure. Was very into pop punk already. I will say that this album did kind of stand out in a sea of a lot of like monotony at the time. There were a lot of bands doing this style at this point. This was also like right after there was like a really like big resurgence in pop punk kind of with like the kind of like sadcore bands like Story So Far and the Wonder Years, Man Overboard, that kind of thing. And I do think that this album having more of like an upbeat and sunny vibe to it was a big part of what made it such a like breath of fresh air at this moment, because all the other bands that were doing like summertime fun pop punk at this point were not writing about very like deep or like emotionally resonant material. So to get a record like this that was fast and aggressive and emotionally resonant and was able to span a lot of different emotions, because obviously you have things like December, you have things like I Hope This Comes Back to Haunt You. That being said, they do it so good. Like there's a reason that this album stands the test of time. It's absolutely like the fan favorite from Neck Deep. It vies between 1 and 2 for me. I really like All Distortions Are Intentional, but I also just like have a soft spot for pop music, which I also think is why I like a lot of this album, because they're just like brilliantly written pop songs. These are my top tracks from Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. I really enjoy the moments on this record that break out of the formula of the kind of like riff, fast verse with like palm muted guitars, chorus, just the bass and drums, which like that's sick.
It's
love
sick every
that.
time.
But it is
It's
like
sick every time.
By the time you get to the end of the record, you are a little bit sick of it. I'll start with I Hope This Comes Back to Haunt You. Lyrically, I think this is maybe the best song on the album. I think that putting this one on here in the first place at all was a little bit of a risk for them. I have like a difficult time calling this a pop punk song over like an alternative rock song. It almost leans more towards something like The Main. It's a little bit more like poppy, indie, alternative sounding than the rest of the album. And I like that it does that. And I like that it's not so abrasive in terms of the production as well. It has a lot more room to breathe than the rest of the album. There's only one guitar for a lot of it. The bass is very featured in this song as well. Everything kind of has like its own standout moment. Whereas on a song like Threat Level Midnight, it is like all 4 instruments just like slamming you in the face the whole time. My next favorite song, I would say Kali Ma, because it's just like so well written. It's like undeniable. I agree that it's weird it wasn't a single. Mm-hmm. I think they didn't want to like give away the Jeremy McKinnon feature, even though it is so small.
It was a Jeremy McKinnon feature on that song?
Yes. My last favorite song on this record is Rock Bottom, the closer. Because I love Man Overboard by Blink-182. It is very much a Blink-182 song. I think Threat Level Midnight is also a Blink-182 song. They are not shy about the inspiration they take from Blink-182, Ben especially. The bass playing on that song is really cool. I like it a lot. I also really like in the bridge when he gets like real country for a second.
Yes.
He like really hits like the time for me to let this one go. And also, like, it's just written really, really well. Like one of my favorite songs on there lyrically, and hits the spot for me. My least favorite song on Less Than Out to Get You is probably Smooth Seas Don't Make It Sailors. Mostly because of the sequencing of the album. When it comes on shuffle, I'm just like, get this out of here. When it comes up on the record, I'm always like so torn on whether or not I want to listen to it, because it's a nice change of pace from December. That's like easily the most downtrodden point on the record, and it has things around it as well. Like also a little more off the beaten path of like the singles and what Neck Deep was kind of known for at this point. So I understand why they kind of like threw this one in there, because Rock Bottom as well breaks out of that formula a little bit and is like kind of just like undeniable as the closer. I think that they chose like the right song to be last. I feel like this album could be like one or two songs shorter. Just like maybe still like I think like less than half an hour.
It's 36 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think it overstays its welcome. It's, it's get in, it's get out, it's fun.
Here are my thoughts on Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. In 2015, I was in undergrad, so I was getting into some music, but I was into more of like indie and like post-punk and that type of stuff, because I was like really tired of like the stale pop punk music that was coming out. During the same time, you had a lot more what I call brocore bands, and I didn't like the song, like the style of it, the sound of it. It sounded very generic and just replicated. I also didn't like the audiences that they would kind of garner. So I would see some of these acts live at like festivals, or they would be opening for other bands that I was seeing. And their audiences were just these very aggro, more like those people that were like, oh, you should not be listening to this music. You're making this like a weird space now. And I just put Neck Deep in there because they were all kind of like in that same vein for me.
I actually don't blame you for doing that. Their stuff before this is a lot more bro-y and aggressive.
Yeah.
And like they were absolutely in that cohort. And this album was kind of like their first step out of that, leaning more towards pop music. Because of that, I think that their fan base shifted a lot after that. But like before that, like I did not blame anyone for not giving this one a shot if they weren't a fan of what Neck Deep was already doing.
Yeah. Here are my top 3 from Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You. So I'm going to throw everybody a curveball here. I did like Threat Level Midnight.
Unbelievable.
I don't hate that song. I don't think it's terrible.
What Maude said earlier of that this should have probably been the opening track, because it gives you the actual vibes that are supposed to be happening on this track. Because once I heard that, I said, okay, this is like borderline bass pop punk with a little bit of pizzazz on it. Love that. Awesome. Now I know. Because when we start off with Citizen of the Earth, I'm like, oh, we're going to be hardcore. We're going to be some 40, like early Sum 41. We're going to get down. And then I'm like, what are we doing here? This is a little bit more of a disconnect for me. I'm cool with like experimenting with different sounds on an album. But at this point, I was like, hey, homies, pick what are you doing? It's like when you write a thesis statement and you start at the top with it and then you have to restate it somewhere, either near the end or at the end. I needed that sound to be restated again or replicated again at the end, because it would have tied it all together and it would have just made more sense of like a cohesive album for me. The other song I liked was Rock Bottom. I thought the guitar intro was really interesting. It gives me more of that like twinkly emo vibes, which I really liked. And it elevates it from that Threat Level Midnight bass pop punk, and we bring it up a little bit. So I like that, the dynamicness with that. And then the last song I really liked, this was before I knew it was a single, was Serpents. Specifically because it sounds like a Hawthorne Heights song.
It does.
Yep.
It does.
I
sound
listened,
like
I said,
Hawthorne
this is
Heights.
so Hawthorne Heights.
It is like an early emo song for sure.
I think that if they figured out what style of pop punk they wanted to do, I feel like this would have been a really strong album. I know that this was strong in like the scene, but I think it could have done a lot better if they've understood which one they wanted to really emphasize more on, because they do all of it really well, but all of it on one album and then saying this is our polished, rounded out version from the last one. I'm like, homies, what was the first one? My least favorite track from Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You was The Beach is for Lovers, Not for Lonely Losers. I thought it was a fun track title. I wanted to like it, but it felt like it's supposed to be a more active song, but it's slowed down, and you could feel that it sounds constrained. Like the lyrics are constrained to this slower beat. And I feel that they made it so because it was kind of packaged into this weird space near like the mid end of the album.
It's a bit of a word salad too.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit for everything that was preceding it. And I was like, all right, guys, you could have probably just taken this one off the album.
Shout out to the fade out though.
Shout out to the
The
fade
only
out.
song on the record I think that has a fade out chorus. Yeah.
Those were our thoughts, our takes, our opinions on this record. But the last question we have to answer is, would we recommend seeing Neck Deep's Life's Not Out to Get You at When We Were Young Fest 2024? Me being a bit older and not really being into Neck Deep that much, I will likely skip it because I do not have any nostalgia for this band at all. But also, like, this record just doesn't have a lot of songs that stick out to me. It does feel to me that Neck Deep will play the best songs off this record at most of their shows. Things like Kali Ma, December are like fan favorites. So I don't think I have to go and see this record in full versus just going to see Neck Deep in general. Being that I have a lot of people in my life, and I'm sure you have a lot of people in your life as well, who are very positive about this band, I'm sure you'll be seeing Neck Deep in your neck of the woods at some point. And I might recommend just seeing them at a regular show, at a little club near you.
Who knows? I might even be there.
Maude pops up.
Love it.
I would absolutely recommend going to see this album at When We Were Young. Neck Deep is an incredible band. They are also probably one of the only bands whose set time will actually be long enough to play the whole record. So there's
so
that.
True.
Also, the energy when Neck Deep plays live is undeniable. And I think because of how much so many people love this album, I think that the energy at that set especially will be infectious. Like it will be very hard to not have a good time. They've also never done this record front to back live as far as I know. So I'm sure there's going to be some people, quite a few people going just to see this one. So it's going to be a fun set. It's going to be a lot of chemistry between them and the audience. And I would recommend that you go see it.
I personally wouldn't see them at When We Were Young Fest. I have a lot of friends who obviously like them. And from the videos I've just seen from friends who have gone to see Neck Deep, it seems like a fun show. And if you are into this specific sector of pop punk, if this is your Blink-182 or New Found Glory, you should definitely go and see it because it'll probably be a really good time. And if this is the first time that they ever played this front to back, could be definitely a treat. But I personally would probably pass on this just because it's not my style of pop punk or even emo adjacentness that I personally would usually listen to.
Those are our thoughts. That's where we'll be at When We Were Young. Where will you be? Hopefully in the comments, hopefully in the like button, liking and commenting to let us know what you thought about this episode. Were we right? Were we wrong? Have you listened to Maude's new record yet? It's out right now.
Yeah, Maude Style, May 31st. It came out today. Listen to it. I worked very hard on it. I promise that it's at least kind of good.
Yeah, so let us know what you think about this record, about Maude's record, about whatever you got to let us know about. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to follow Maude on all the socials. Everything is listed down below. And from all of us here at the Emo Social Club, the Life's Not Out to Get You crowd, the Neck Deep crowd, the When We Were Young crowd, we'll see you there.